Thanks very much. Minister, in your second reading speech, you argued that it's urgent to pass Bill C-8 because cyber threats are becoming more numerous, more sophisticated, and more pervasive. Yet after a decade of consultation and after the Senate's in-depth study of Bill C-26, and despite 6 months between that previous bill dying on the order paper because the government chose to prorogue, why did your government then choose to reintroduce a virtually identical bill instead of making important revisions from the start that would have addressed the major flaws that were identified by key witnesses here at this committee and allowed Parliament to move forward more quickly on that? Isn't there a contradiction between the urgency that you're invoking and the lack of diligence that your government showed in preparing this bill initially last year?
I would beg to differ, Senator. I would say that there was an urgency to introduce the bill. The previous Bill C-26 had gone through all the different stages. It was right at Parliament's doorstep for technical amendment. I think that the work of Senator McNair in that, I think, is noteworthy. It is to ensure that the bill was able to get royal assent. Of course, when we introduced that bill, our expectation was that if there are new items that come up, we will work with our opposition. Some 75% of the amendments we accepted were from opposition, which is actually quite remarkable, because we had a sense that working in collaboration was critical. This is not a bill to be politicized, and for the most part, we were working with the different parties in the House to ensure that all those concerns, and there were many valid concerns that were taken into account as amendments, and we were able to pass those amendments, which is now before you.
Right. Yes, the only thing is that many of those concerns had already been brought up in the previous iteration and could have been made before you introduced it. And the technical amendment you spoke of would have actually potentially knocked out half your bill. So yes, that was important to make that amendment. But there were 3 important amendments that were made by Conservative MPs at the House Committee on Bill C-8, which would have required that judicial authorization before ministerial powers and ministerial orders be allowed in certain instances under this statute. And your Liberal government did choose to oppose those key amendments, and rather than agree to have those changes made to Bill C-8, you could have agreed to include those judicial authorization amendments in Bill C-8, but you hadn't learned those lessons that were articulated by a lot of witnesses who testified at our Senate committee in the C-26 hearings. And nearly all of the witnesses who testified, other than government witnesses, strongly advocated for more oversight, which would have been accomplished by that type of judicial authorization. Minister, why didn't your government agree to make those types of those key amendments to improve the bill and protect Canadians' rights by putting those important judicial authorization measures into Bill C-8?
So, Senator, I believe those amendments were ruled out of scope.
You could have chose to put them
well,
in.
I would say, look, having a bill go through the different processes, it's neither an art nor a science. I think it's a bit of both. And this is a bill, for all intents and purposes, passed in its first iteration as Bill C-26. It has been improved, and I would say it improved because all parties worked together. And it is now before this House. And I do believe that the strengthened bill should pass. There's certainly there is an urgency and there's a need, and I do think that we need to work in collaboration to get to the point of passage of this bill.
Okay. Do you think the judicial authorization measures are not required?
Well, look, I think the safeguards are there. As I've indicated from the outset, the safeguards are there. There's reference to NCIRA. There's a reference to NCICOP. Yeah. There's some matters which are of confidential nature that requires protection, but there is also ability for entities to go to court if that's what they desire. So those safeguards are quite in place.
Thank you.